Hey guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. So let's talk about neutrality. Let's talk about unconditional love. The last video that I did, I don't know, the video before this one, I said I was going to make a video about neutrality and unconditional love because it's another really important aspect to this path that we need to hit on, that we need to understand. So when we're talking about coming into balance within, and we're talking about, balancing out the energies, neutralizing the energies, and all of these sort of things, we're talking about stepping back into, I shouldn't say back into because it isn't back, but we're stepping into our soul, right? We're stepping into our consciousness. We are dropping what no longer serves us in this reality, and we're shifting higher in our frequency, higher in our vibration, right? When we are going through a spiritual awakening, going through ascension. So what really this balance, what we're talking about when we're saying, I need to come into balance, I need to balance out the energies, I need to neutralize and all of these sort of things. And then we hear a lot about, that neutrality feels really boring, or neutrality feels like, there's no emotion, and all of those sort of things. And we can call this duality or non-duality as well. So I really want to hit on that and what we're looking at in regard to all of this, and how it plays out when we're talking about inner union and also physical union with the twin. So soul in general, right? Consciousness in general, source, creation, God, all that is. Our true nature is a non-dualistic nature, right? We are not all about, the up and down, the on and off, the hot and cold, the egoic patternings, the mechanisms, separation consciousness, all of these sort of things we have come to experience and to have growth and expansion as souls, but not to stay in these paradigms, not to stay in these lower vibratory frequencies of desire, of passion, of hate, of dislike, of like, of, it's just always, everything is polarized. We're dealing with opposites all the time. And so when we have a high, we're going to have a low. When we have an up, we're going to have a down. This is just the way things work. That's all fine and good. But when we're talking about moving from consciousness, right? Moving from soul, coming into balance within, balancing the energetic dance within, right? Of the masculine and the feminine within, and all of these things. And we're talking about coming into neutrality. What we're really saying is that the soul, consciousness, is unconditional love. The vibration, the high vibration, the frequency of the universe, of source, God, creation, all that is unconditional love, right? There are no conditions. There is no high or low. There is no good or bad, right? We are coming from a very neutral vibratory state, right? A very neutral vibratory state is not up and down, high and low, passion, hot, cold, but it is joy, and it is peace, and it is love, right? It is harmony, it is unity. And so within this reality, we have the idea that joy means happiness, that peace means good, that love means romance, all of these sort of things. Where in truth, these things that I just described are our natural state of being, right? Our natural state of being is joy. Joy isn't good or bad, high or low. It is our natural state of being. Love is not just romantic. Love is not about the heat and the passion and the toxicity and the arguments and the, all of those sort of things. All of that is based in a fear-based energy, which is based in separation consciousness, right? Unity consciousness is coming from an unconditionality. It's coming from neutrality. It's coming from that 0 point state. It's coming from balance, right? So when we're talking about coming back into balance within, we are talking about coming back into neutrality. We are talking about coming back into that still point of unconditionality, right? It's not emotionality. It's not these highs and lows. And so we like really get into this whole thing about the twin flame dynamic of feeling like I want to go back, or I want to, have again with my divine masculine or my divine feminine, the same kind of intense interaction that I had with them in the beginning stages, right? When we first met, when the activation happened, in those first weeks, those first months, however long that happened, right? I want to feel that high again, right? I want to feel that again. Not realizing that when, sorry, my dog's in here. Not realizing that when that is what we're wanting to recreate or attract, that energy as well was also polarized, right? It was also coming from a dualistic state of being, because we were operating from a dualistic state of being, right? So when we're coming back into inner union, everything is just balanced. We're just neutral now, right? We don't have that on and off, back and forth, hot and cold within. And so we don't have it with the twin physically. So having these types of romantic interactions that are like really based on high passion, or we have those, comparing them to karmic situations where there's like that element of toxicity, or even in a twin flame dynamic where we have that element of, obsessiveness and need and pursuing and chasing. All of that is like wreaking havoc with your emotional system, right? It's why we're always feeling like unregulated. It's like when we first start dating someone, it feels amazing. It feels really, really, really good. And then a couple months into the relationship, either it falls apart and we crash and burn, or the real relationship begins and we don't like that now because we don't have that high anymore, right? So whatever comes up must come down, as I said. Neutrality does not have this component, right? Unconditional love does not have this component. This is what we are working towards, I guess, if I could say that. Working isn't the right thing to say, but this is where you are ascending back to, right? This is what peace means. When we're at a state of peace, we are not being yanked around by our emotions or by our thoughts, right? We're not being yanked around by external circumstance. We are simply in a peaceful state of being, right? A Zen state, some people call that, right? This is what coming into balance within does, right? This is that blissful state of being where I am no longer basically a victim to all of my emotionalities, or to all of my inner dialogue, or to my ego conditionings, or to the patterns and the traumas. These things are no longer a part of your resonance or your alignment once you are in inner balance with self, once you are back in inner union, right? And so when you're in this place, which feels amazing, by the way, because you're simply not affected by all of the duality and the polarization and the separation that you have been experiencing here in the 3D for however many lifetimes. But that being said, that also translates into the dynamic physically with the twin, right? Once you're in inner union with self, and if you decide to be in physical union with the twin, it's going to translate like that, right? So in other words, that physical union with the twin, once you're now in inner union with self, is also going to be very balanced. It's going to feel very peaceful. It's going to be in a joyful state, but not in a state that you're being yanked around emotionally. You're not going to be having those highs and lows. It's not going to have that obsessive, toxic like quality that potentially it had during your, during your journey before you got into inner union and all of these sort of things. And so we really need to understand what's actually going on here, because most of the time when we're talking about, I really want to be in romantic partnership with my twin, and this is why I talk about things like you can't go backwards into the same third dimensional romantic templates that you have been playing out for however many incarnations with the twin. This is why I say things like, you cannot have a third dimensional romantic relationship with the twin if you are in inner union. Once you are in inner union, you have a fifth dimensional union dynamic with the twin in the physical, right? Because once you have come into inner union, you are now vibrating at a fifth dimensional frequency, right? You are operating in the physical world, but you are no longer playing the 3D game. The 3D game has absolutely no resonance to you anymore once you have come into inner union. All of that stuff and all of those programs and all of those patterns and all of those imprints that you've been running will simply not resonate with you at all in any way, shape, or form. This is what I mean when I'm talking about jumping timelines, right? This is jumping timelines. Ascension is jumping timelines, and it's shifting in vibratory states and vibratory frequency. So the whole purpose of meeting the twin, right, of kind of having your incarnation here with you to assist you down the awakening path and going through the ascension, is to come into inner union. It is to come into that balance within, right? So you are back in that stable state of abundance, of joy, of love, of peace, in a high vibratory state. No longer like happiness, sadness, whatever, in the 3D. That's not the same vibration that you are shifting into as you're going through the ascension process. So when you come into inner union, if you're with your divine masculine physically, or if you're not, you are still holding the template of divine union. The template of divine union, sacred union, is one of a fifth dimensional vibratory state. It is in a higher frequency, right? It is in a harmonious place of interaction between individuals. It is more of an interdependent situation. You're no longer running codependency templates anymore, right? It's a harmonious place to be. It's a peaceful state of being, right? There's no more of all of the doing that you are doing in the 3D. It's just now you're attracting all of this love and joy and abundance and oneness and unconditional love that you are. And so this is the experience that you have with the twin. It's a high vibratory physical interaction that you have with the twin once you've come into inner union. It's not going to look anything like what it did on and off, hot and cold, back and forth, and any of those things with them in the physical once you've come into inner union, right? It's going to show up in its divinity. It's going to show up in its sovereignty. If you are in your sovereignty and you are in your divinity as a divine feminine, that is the way that your physical interaction with the twin flame is also going to show up, right? I'm taking the timetable off this video because this is not a time thing. How long is that going to happen? When am I going to finally get there? Well, how long does that usually take? Those questions are coming from your fear-based egoic mechanisms. So just be aware of that. It takes the time that it takes, right? It's going to be different for everyone. But the thing is that when we're in this state of inner union, and then if you choose to be in physical union with the divine masculine at that point, that interaction that you're going to have with them is going to be at a higher vibratory state. It is going to be at a higher frequency because you are at a higher frequency, and because the twin is a reflection of you. The twin is a manifestation of what is going on within you. And you are moving through the ascension process to come back into soul alignment. You are soul. It's not alignment. It's just coming back into soul, coming back into consciousness, coming back into God source creation, you know, everything that is, all that you are. And that is a very peaceful, very joyful, very neutral state of being, right? This is why when you're in this place, you're not having any more of like that yanking around from the twin. It ends, it stops. And it doesn't mean to say that you might not have like a little niche here and there of like, oh, I remember that trigger, or oh, I remember when I used to run that pattern, or oh, that kind of felt a little familiar. But as quick as it comes, if it even does, is as quick as it goes, right? Things just are not going to affect you in the same way that they did when you were in a 3D vibratory state. They're just not going to affect you like that anymore. And the relationships that you had then are not going to look like the relationship potentially, or the dynamic and connection that you have with your twin in the physical, right? So this is just something that I wanted to hit on, because I think there's a lot, I know that there's a lot of confusion about, like, you know, a lot of divine feminines really wanting this romantic relationship, and that's what they think this dynamic is about. It's about your awakening, but above and, well, not above and beyond that. The awakening is the above and beyond, but in addition to that, we need to understand that when we're chasing, or when we're hoping to have that same kind of relationship template that we had with our karmics and our soulmates, and even that we had on and off with our twin, that those types of relationship dynamics were coming from your separation with self, right? They were coming from, you know, those imprints and those belief systems and those, you know, limited ways of thinking that you have been aligning to. And so that's the way the relationships in your life were showing up. But once you come into inner union, that's not the way the relationship with the masculine is going to show up anymore, right? It's going to show up as a reflection of your inner love for self, of your relationship with self. So it isn't that being in neutrality is boring. I keep hearing that. You know, that why would I want to be in a neutral state? You know, well, if that's all that balance is just coming into neutrality, I don't really want that. If I'm never going to have like passion again, or all of these sorts of things, I hear this often. And so I wanted to clarify. The thing is that, you know, passion isn't love, right? It isn't love. Butterflies are not love either. It's actually anxiety, if you want to do the research on it, right? These are things that feel anxious. You know, when you see someone and you feel anxious, or you have butterflies and all of these things, that's generally not a good sign, but we've been taught that it's a good sign, right? We've been taught that that's the way that it's supposed to feel when you like really like someone and whatever else. But anxiety isn't a positive thing. When you meet someone that you potentially would want to spend romantic time with, the key thing is calm, peace, safety, right? Alignment, resonance. Those are the things that we should really be shifting the narrative on in regard to romantic partnership with another person, right? It's not about like having like, you know, the opposites attract, and it's like contrasting. It's like, you know, all of these sort of like discordant energies and distortions, or, you know, like attracts like, and now we're just having the same issues together and all of those sort of things. That's really not. Those are third dimensional dynamic templates, and that's all fine and good. I'm not knocking that. Again, I keep having to say this. But when you're on a twin flame path, which means you're awakening and you're potentially having a romantic, physical dynamic with the twin, it's going to be coming from a place where the divine feminine is holding either separation or unity within. Your goal is unity within. And that unity within is going to reflect back to you as a calm, peaceful state with the twin flame, right? That's one of the ways that you can gauge. You'll already know if you're in inner union. You won't have really much doubt of once you're in inner union. You're going to feel it. It may come in and out and kind of, you know, before you anchor. But once you anchor in inner union, it's amazing. It feels incredible, right? And at some point, the divine masculine, again, if you're in physical union with them, this is a choice point. It is a choice point. Is going to show up in that very, you know, calm, neutral state. You're not going to be getting yanked around anymore, right? So it isn't boring. It's peaceful, right? It's actually your natural resting place as a soul is harmony, right? I mean, that's probably a better way to really describe it. You know, it's being in harmony with self. You know, it's being in love with self. It's being in a very gentle, held type of an energy. It's hard to really explain. You know, it's really coming back home to source within. And so as the twin is you, they are reflecting that back to you. You know, you're just not in that place anymore of like being afraid that they're gonna like run, or what are they gonna do, or who are they with, or it's just all of that. Once you're in union with self, it's just like none of that stuff is in resonance with you anymore. It's like you're not even on that vibration, you're not in that frequency anymore. So that stuff's just gonna stop showing up in your life, right? It may take a little while for it to taper off, right? Catch the timelines catch up, but it's just not gonna be part of your experience anymore. It's not gonna be part of your reality anymore. And being in union with self and then being in physical union with twin, it's not an emotion, but it is blissful, right? It is a blissful state. I don't see bliss as an emotion, right? I see it just as a frequency, just like love is just a frequency, right? An amazing frequency, and one that we are from, right? Our natural resting place vibratorily is love, unconditional love. So I just wanted to answer that question for those of you who have inquired. I hope that makes sense. I hope that resonates, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.